3 product reveal animations that you can easily do in DaVinci Resolve. Right, this is the first one. Actually, I'm going to build it a little bit differently. In this case, I'm just going to do everything inside Fusion without having to use this adjustment layer because we can still do that. So let's start by this. If your clip has a little bit of movement from your tripod not being completely stable for some reason, what you want to do first is grab your clip and then go to stabilization right here and then stabilize these. Now we have this clip here. On the same clip, I have the clean plate. So what I'm going to do in this case is I'm going to cut that there. And I'm going to bring that right in front. And I'm going to make these a little bit longer like that. You don't have to turn these into a Fusion clip. You can directly work on the top layer right here. But I did these for the second reveal and it worked better. So we're going to do that. So we're going to right click. Now, new Fusion clip. And then we can rename this clip if you want right here. There was one step that I did before anything, and that was actually going into the color page and adjusting those clips, adding a little bit of contrast and stuff. But the order in which you do these doesn't really matter. You can do these after everything is done as well if you want. After you're ready, we're going to open this in Fusion. So what you need to do is we're going to add a background node, and then we're going to use a polygon right here. And we're going to draw around our subject. We can connect these right here already. And we can change the color of our background. We're going to draw around our subject. And you can make these as perfect as you want it to be. You don't have to make it completely perfect. But you get the gist of it. All right. So after you have drawn your polygon, what you want to do is adjust the thickness of it. So adjust the border width a little bit. And then also the softness of it if you want to do that. After you have your first line, let's animate the length. And then that way we don't have to do these again for all of the polygons, right? Because you can just copy and paste these and then just redraw the polygon. So to animate these, we're going to set the first keyframe at 0, like that. We're going to go to 48, so it's going to be 2 seconds. And we're going to set these up completely to be like that. Okay, after your first line is done, you can just copy and paste these and then continue to draw the different polygons around the edges of your object. In this case, I already have them made, so I'm just going to insert them right here. Okay, so we have all the lines ready and they all have the same animations. Now, if you want these to have a little bit of variation, you can also adjust the position of these. So the starting point is a little bit different, right? Like that. So you can see how it moves around there. And you can even animate the position if you want to do that. After you have all the lines and they are all animated, go to the spline section and then you can select all of them. And then you can adjust the spline curves by pressing F and then adjust the ease in and out points. So the animation is a little bit more interesting. If this bothers you right here, we can just click up here and then get rid of the show controls. So for now, we're not going to see the controls. That's something that you don't want to see. For the next step, we can add a glow node and we can use the modifier here on the glow to add a little bit of a shakiness to the glow. So we're going to add the shake modifier and we're going to adjust the minimum point to be a little bit over 8 and decrease a little bit the maximum as well. And that will give us a little bit of a glowing flicker almost type of effect. Okay, right now, if we take a look, the next clip that we have shows up at frame 40 and it's almost at the end of the polygons. So I'm going to actually select all of these polygons and I'm going to move them a little bit. So the object that we have is a little bit like start showing up when the lines are in the middle maybe. Actually, I'm going to move these a little bit more. So we're going to start these at around the 20 frames mark in this case. And we're going to animate the blending mode for the object layer that we have right here. Now, one thing you can do is add the blending layer or the blend animation right here to be the same exact length as these polygons. But in this case, I'm going to start it at 40. And we're going to end right before the lines end completely. So at 68, they end. So around 62, that should be good. We're going to set these to 1. Now I'm going to actually go to the merge node splines and adjust the curvature of these as well. like that. Okay, that's pretty good. Now, the next step is if you want the lines to disappear after a little bit, we can actually use, instead of animating the polygons again, we can just go, let's say we're going to go 20 frames. And we're going to animate this merge node right here. So in this case, we're going to do it manually. So there's like sort of like a flicker and then they disappear. So we're going to create a keyframe, go 2 frames, decrease these to like 0.7, go 1 frame, now increase this a little bit, go 2 frames again, decrease this again, now 1 frame or 2, make these a little bit higher, and do these a couple of times until you make these disappear completely. So let's take a look at how that looks. 7. So for the next step, let's do the zoom out animation. For that, we're going to use a transform node. And in this case, we're going to see, I'm going to show the controls again. I'm going to set the pivot point to be a little bit more in the center. And we're going to animate the scale and rotation. Since we want these to be a little bit fast, we're going to start, let's say, around this mark maybe. And I'm going to zoom these a lot. And I'm going to rotate these to like 90-ish degrees. We're going to create those first keyframes right there. Now let's say we're going to go, let's try 12 frames in this case. And now we're going to set these to 1. And now the angle to 0. So we have that zoom out animation. Now we're going to go to the spline in this case, press F, and then we're going to ease out or bring the ease out all the way to 0. And then increase the ease in a little bit. That way we have that more punchy zoom out effect. Now that effect is not completely done yet, but what we can do here is go to the settings and add motion blur and increase the shutter angle, maybe the center bias a little bit and the sample spread. And let's take a look at that. If you want, you can add an extra layer of blurriness by using a radial blur. So what we're going to do is increase the radial blur a little bit, and on the same keyframes that we have these transform node, we're going to do that first keyframe, and then we're going to make these go away right at the end. And we're also going to do the same for the curvatures of it. So press F and then adjust the ease in and ease out points like that. Now back in the edit page, what you can do is start these, instead of having it be a little bit longer here, let me turn off these render cache. So instead of starting it for a few seconds, for a few frames in here, just find the right point right here, right when the animation or the zoom out starts, and just cut the clip right there and start it from there. And that is how you can do that first reveal. Now, obviously, make sure to add sound effects and play around with that, because that will sell the effect a lot better if you do. This video is brought to you by the Paperfall Effects. So check out paperfalleffects.com if you want to add paper effects to your videos. And right now you get a second pack, which is the hand-drawn elements, completely for free with your purchase of the Paperfall Effect. So paperfalleffects.com. Let's continue with the video. All right, let's jump into the second reveal. For this one, let's take a look. We have I guess we could call this drop-down reveal. In this case, we're going to have the same exact setup. So what I'm going to do is grab that first clip again, make sure it's stabilized. There it goes. Now we're going to turn this into a fusion clip. So we're going to right click, new fusion clip. Rename these however you want. So inside Fusion, we are going to mask these using a polygon again. I tried using the magic mask, but it was not that great. So that's what we're going to do. I'm going to actually disconnect these for a little bit and then just start masking around our subject. Okay, after we have that mask done, this is what it's going to look like. So we have that object by itself. So what we want to do is add a transform node. Okay, now between the media in and the transform node, add a drop shadow and try to match that previous one. To match these, the easiest way to do so would be to have another clip or another copy of your clip. So what is the best way to match this one? So I think we're going to copy these media out or media in, and then set this up to be a multiple screen. Now we have both of these side by side. This one is the one that has a mask on, and this one is this one. And then we can adjust the drop shadow, decrease the blurriness so that we can see exactly where it is right now. Decrease the distance. And we're gonna rotate these. If it gets stuck at 180 and it's not exactly where you want it to be, you can actually just input a number right here. Let's say -200, and then we'll just go over. So that's what we want. That's good. And we can also increase the blurriness back again and increase the strength of the shadow as well. That looks pretty good. And this is going to be a vertical video, so it doesn't have to be completely perfect, right? So you don't have to worry that much about it looking perfect. After you've added the drop shadow, what we want to do is animate the transform node. So we're going to start at frame 5, and we're going to use a keyframe on the transform right here. And I'm going to move the pivot point a little bit towards the center of our object, because at the end, we're going to animate the scale or the size when the impact happens. So let's animate the object falling. On the first keyframe, we're going to bring the object outside of our screen, and we're going to go 10 frames forward. And that's where we're going to bring these back to 0.5. Now let's adjust the spline curves right here, fit to screen, press F. To make sure that the item doesn't slow before the impact, on the second keyframe, we want to set the curves to be like this. And you can actually increase the curvature like this a little bit as well. And if we take a look at these, it looks like that. So it's a lot faster, and then it just ends right there. Now this step is optional. You can add a little bit of a size animation. So I'm going to add the size keyframe right at the last frame. We're going to go 1 frame backwards. Add another keyframe, so it's normal 1. Now this one will be the impact, so I'm going to make this a little bit bigger, just a tiny bit. It doesn't have to be that much. And then I'm going to go 1 frame forward again and set these up to be normal. This is a minor detail. It's not going to be really that noticeable, right? So it's not a big deal if you don't add these. Now you can also add curves to these if you want, so it's a little bit more impactful, but it's just 1 frame, right? So it's not gonna happen for that long. Now a great way to hide these minor tweaks or keyframes that you add so that it doesn't look that weird is to add motion blur. So we're gonna do that, and we're gonna increase the quality and increase the shutter angle. As you can see here, this is how the shutter angle affects it. If you decrease these, it's gonna be really close to the object. If you make these bigger, then it's going to be like a bigger trail of your object. You can also adjust the center bias, and then also the sample spread, which has a little bit of a different effect on your object as well. So I think that's good for now. To sell the impact effect a little bit more, I wanted to have something that would make it look like it was an impact. And smoke was the answer, right? But I couldn't find like a stock video that was exactly like a smoke impact of an object falling in this angle, right? So I thought I would try to do something a little bit different. I try to create my own. It's not perfect, but I'm going to show you either way how to do it if you don't have like a stock video available of smoke or impact smoke. We're going to add this background node right here. I'm going to set the color to a gradient, and I'm going to make that other side a little bit more grayish. I'm going to bring this to the center, and then on the image box right here, we're going to disable auto resolution and then set this up to be a square background. Okay. On this background, we're going to add an ellipse, uncheck solid. Here, we're going to animate the border width and also the scale. So we're going to start at 0 because we're going to use a time stretcher node for these later on. So at 0, we're going to make the border width, I think that's good, 0.7, and increase the softness a little bit as well. And then I'm going to animate the size of these to be 0 and 0. We're going to go, let's do 15 frames for now. But we're going to animate these later on with the time stretcher, as I mentioned, so it doesn't have to be perfect. And this one has to be 0. So we have these sort of smoke impact. Now, smoke itself is not going to be like that. So we need to add a displacement node. So we're going to add a displace. On this displace, use a fast noise. And on this fast noise, you can press 2 and then adjust the different values if you want. There's no rules set in stone for these, right? So just play around until you get something that you like. Okay, on the displacement, node, what we can do is adjust the offset right here and also a little bit of the refraction strength. And that would basically deform it a little bit more. So let's take a look at these. So that's our impact smoke. I want to go to the splines right here, select all of these, press F. Now ease in these, and then we're going to decrease the ease out, similar to what we did for the impact. So the impact of the smoke is sort of similar in that way. Okay, we have 15. I wanted to have 2 of those. So the best way to do that is to create a copy of these right here. I'm going to move the position of these. And I'm going to merge these with a merge node right here. That way we can actually adjust the values of both of these. So they are a little bit different from each other if you want. And also we're going to adjust the offset a little bit of the displacement. So it's a little bit of a different touch on this one as well. But what you want to do is we're going to select these ellipse that has the keyframes, and we're going to delay these by a little bit. So just like 3 frames would be enough, I think. So let's take a look. Let's try that. We have our smoke ready. And the next step would be to add a time stretcher. Let's connect these together. So our animation for this smoke goes from 0 all the way to 18. So when the impact happens right here is at frame, let's see, at frame 15 is when the impact happens. It shows up right there. So we're going to start this at frame 14. And then let's see, we're going to go, how many frames is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 frames. And we're going to set these up to be 18 already. Let's see how that looks. That's good. I like that. But there's one missing thing still. We need to add a transform node. And in this case, we're going to use this second one. And we're going to change the control mode to interactive pins. Okay, and I'm going to draw 4 pins around our object right here. I'm going to try to make these as close to a proper square so we can. Now I'm going to be moving these pins right here to try to position our objects in a similar perspective as our object right here. That's good. If you want, you can change the apply mode to overlay. No, the overlay doesn't work. So let's adjust the blending mode a little bit. That's good. And if it is too big still, we can just make this a little bit smaller as well by adjusting the pins that we have right here. There's still something that we need to do, and that is to add that impact shake. To add this impact, we want to add a transform node, a normal transform node in this case. And I'm going to go right where the impact happens. So at frame 15, and I'm going to create a size keyframe right here. And I wanted to use a shake modifier and try to see if that worked, but that didn't work quite well. And the easiest way to do this is to manually do this. So we're going to use a few frames. So I'm going to go to this frame 15. I'm going to go 1 frame forward, and I'm going to move these to a random place like that. Now 1 frame forward again, go again, just like completely random shake. And after a couple of frames, bring these back to the center. Now let's take a look at how this looks. Yeah, that looks really weird and not good at all. But the way to fix this or to make this look good is, first of all, we need to make sure that this doesn't happen. So go to edges, change these to mirror, and that will hide these pretty well, usually. If it doesn't hide it as well, you can just try to adjust the shake position a little bit so it's not that noticeable. As we did on the previous transform nodes, we're going to use the motion blur to hide any imperfection that happens within our animation. So let's take a look at these. Now you can make these last as long as you want or as short as you want, obviously. Now, one extra thing that I showed you here is that these sells the effect even more, if you want, if you will, right? And that is the addition of that smoke that or that steam that happens right in the front. In this case, I'm not going to show you, I didn't build these. I use these steam right here. So we're going to do that. So I'm going to just copy and paste that and show you real quick. So there's one cool thing that a lot of people don't know about DaVinci is that it has a bunch of templates already made for like effects like these. So if you go to Fusion or to effects, templates, and in Fusion, now go to particles, we're going to find a couple of things that were built with particles. In this case is the steam. So if I take a look at these, we can see this is a steam generator like that. So what I did in this case is I modified these so that the steam only happened at the same time, or the particle emitter only happened at the same time that the impact happened. In this case, on the previous video or the previous example that I showed you, these happened right here at these frames. So I'm just going to move that right here and try to apply these to the same frames that we use in this video. Let's see. Like that. And that's when the steam happens. Now, another thing I did here is I changed the renderer to 18 or 1080 by 1920 and make these vertical, because the default sometimes comes with like a lot smaller resolution, right? So if I take a look at these combined, that is sort of how it looks. Now, this doesn't look that great yet because I have to adjust the blending mode of these merge node and the timing of these as well. I think there's something else that I had to animate somewhere, but that is the idea. Now for the particles, I'm not going to dive deep into this because we can spend so much time into using these particles, but that is one thing that I did. And if you don't want to spend time trying to learn about these particle things, what you can do is use stock footage of smoke just going on like that upwards and then try to composite that with your product reveal. So that's pretty much it for the second one. Now for the last one, I got this idea while working on the previous one the other day. And I thought, well, let me try to mix the paperful collage effect with these and see how it ends up looking, right? And it ended up working pretty well, I would say. Okay, so to use the paperful collage, what we want to do is first, we're going to set our clean plate, then our clip that has the object. And I'm going to actually cut these around this area. And I'm going to have to mask our object again right here. All right, after we've cut that first section, what you want to do is open this in Fusion. And I'm going to add a polygon right here to mask our object. All right, now, since we cut this clip right here, let's see what's the duration, 16. I'm going to make this a little bit longer. Now, to use this effect, one thing that happens is that it takes into account the first keyframe, right? So if you add these to a clip that doesn't start at frame 0, then the effect will be a little bit different because it doesn't actually start at 0. So let's take a look. This one starts at 28, right? So we're going to turn these into a Fusion clip, and now we can add this effect to our object. Now we can go to the paper base section, and I'm going to go a few frames forward until the paper is completely ready or completely on screen. Adjust the paper view position, not the paper view, the paper base position. And then we're going to uncheck the paper view control. We're going to set the mode to normal again, and let's take a look at these. Now I'm going to uncheck out because I don't want the animation to have an ultra right now. And in this case, what I did was I decreased these a little bit. Let's see what the duration is. So that's for 10 seconds. Like that. I'm going to make these a little bit smaller. And I'm going to bring this back right there. So we have the clip continuing with the actual clip or the live clip instead of these masked out version of our object on the blank plate that we had. So one thing I did to mix this a little bit better was I did have this shadow effect added to these. So if you go to open effects, we can add a drop shadow similar to what we did on the previous review. I use a drop shadow. In this case, choose an open effects drop shadow, but I'm going to copy these and just paste this right here as a plugin right here. Now we have that shadow. Now, one thing that happens here is that the shadow is not completely exactly the same. So in order to hide these, I use this adjustment layer that we have right here. And that actually also has the rotation and also a little bit of a scale animation right here. So let's take a look at these, happening with the rotation zoom out. And we can see these little punching that happens is what I did to hide that cut that we have right there. In this case, let's go to that frame where that happens. And now we're going to open this Fusion clip. I'm going to have to, first of all, select everything that has a keyframe in this. And I'm going to make these a lot smaller. So first of all, we're going to set this radial blur to end at frame 15. And on the transform node, we're going to bring these to frame 15 as well. And where is the size one? Okay, up here. For the size, then I think we need to make this a little bit smaller as well, like here. One more frame, that should be good. Now, if we take a look at these, both of them together, that cut or that clip cut that happens is going to be basically hidden because it's going to be so imperceptible. Is that even a word? It's going to be so hard to perceive because that happens so fast. So those are the 3 product reveal ideas and how you can create them in DaVinci Resolve. Pretty easy, I would say. Just try them out. That is it for this video. I hope I'll see you in the next one here in SUALVI.